Hello, welcome back to the Edge of the Box podcast, a podcast by WhoScored.com. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by WhoScored's very own Ben. You're making your debut this week, Ben, looking very snazzy in the Ajax shirt. And we've got Spurs point of view as well. We've got last word on Spurs. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm not bad, thank you. Not bad. Ricky here, just so everyone can
don't know why I decided not to call you by your name.
I feel like I am last. I feel like I am last one on Spurs, but yeah, nice to meet you guys. Ricky here. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Ricky, of course, did the Spurs preview for us and was a bit, not subdued the wrong word, but you were a bit tentative with your predictions. But Spurs have got off to a good start as expected, which we'll come on to later on in the show. Now, it is game week 1. This is where all the predictions that you make pre-season go completely out the window. You lose all your bets and you're bottom of the Fantasy Football League. That's how my weekend went anyway, and my team lost as well, of course. Ben, what lessons have we learned from the first week? What stood out to you?
I think the key one was Fulham. I really thought they would get turned over by Liverpool. I know they obviously did really well under Marco Silva last season, but Silva has a very questionable record in the Premier League. But they held their own against Liverpool. Mitrovic absolutely bullied Van Dijk on and off the ball, and they really surprised me. A good omen for things to come for them, I think.
Yeah, I was really impressed by Fulham. I sat there and watched that game Saturday lunchtime. Mitrovic, Ricky, he did cause Van Dijk problems on the floor as well. A bit of Feetabix at times from Mitrovic. You don't often see Van Dijk in trouble on the floor, especially against someone like Mitrovic.
Yeah, I think, Joe, he came into the game with a real point to prove. I think there's a question mark as to whether he can become a Premier League striker. There's no doubt, of course, done really, really well in the Championship. And I think if Fulham do stay up, that's a key reason as to why they will stay up, because I think you can already see he is raring to go, took both his goals really, really well. And I think generally now you look at Fulham, they've made some astute signings. I think you've got to say under Marco Silva. I think as a manager, there is still that question mark as to whether he is a Premier League proven manager. We saw he really failed at Everton. So he's come back, I think, at Fulham with vengeance, got them up, wants to prove his Premier League pedigree. And listen, a point at home to Liverpool, certainly not a bad start at all. They'll be disappointed to concede the goal late at the end. But overall, I think if you offered Fulham a point beforehand, they would have snapped your arm off for it.
Yeah, and I think as well, Marco Silva, actually, if you look at, he's left Everton and they've not been any good since. I don't think he actually did a bad job. When you look back at what he did there, came close to keeping Hull up as well. I thought Fulham looked very, very good on Saturday. There was a lot to like about what Fulham did. Staying with you, Ricky, we're coming on to Spurs because we're previewing their game this weekend. But always nice to start off the season with 3 points, isn't it?
Absolutely, a convincing 3 points. I think, we didn't get off to the start we wanted against Southampton in terms of the goal going against us, but I've got to say, and it actually worries me now talking about this with Tottenham, bearing in mind that obviously I've done last one on Spurs for the last 5-6 years. There seems to be a calming, unerring presence about Tottenham that even when they go behind, they are so fully focused on bringing the game back, going in front. It almost feels too calm and too composed from Tottenham about going behind in a game now. And there is just that air of confidence under Conte that no matter what is thrown at them, they will find a way to win. Now, again, it is only Southampton. I think, listen, they lost their last 4 games of last season. So certainly, I don't want to get too carried away. And I try and always keep my feet on the ground with Tottenham. But you can only beat what's in front of you. And I thought the way Spurs come back into the game was phenomenal. I think Kulusevski is proving himself to be one of the best 22-year-olds in, I would honestly go and say, world football. I know that's a really big statement to say, and people might be able to put a laughter track in the background there. But I honestly think this guy is phenomenal. When you look at the stats of last season, I think Kane, Son, Kulusevski were up there towards the end of last season as the three. Well, as a front three, they're up there along with the stats of being the top 3 players, contributing, assisting, scoring goals, goal involvements as well. They've been phenomenal. And it's great to know that really Kane and Son, they can afford to have an off day. And Kulusevski's there. Richarlison's going to come off the bench. So Spurs got some real strength in depth in terms of that forward line. I think, as I've always remained consistent on last one on Spurs, and I'll say it on here as well, I still think that we may need to get ourselves a creative midfielder. I think there'll be certain games where the likes of Everton, Fulham, Brentford, Forest, they're going to come and potentially put 10 behind the ball, low block. Have we got the capability to find a way to win? And although I'm really contradicting myself because I am saying we can find a way to win already, I still think there'll be certain games where you may need to tweak that formation, which I know Conte doesn't normally tend to do. He normally tends to stick to the same 11, the same formation. But if a James Maddison or a Nicolo Zaniolo is available, or Lucas Paqueta for that matter, I certainly wouldn't be against seeing Spurs just dip their toes again into the market. I know we've been very busy, 6 already through a seventh joining us soon in Destiny Udogie that will go back out on loan. So can't really complain, if I'm being honest with you, Dan, as much as I've tried to have a little bit of a moan there.
Yeah, some debutants from the bench for Spurs, Ben. But if you were to pick a debutant from the Premier League weekend who impressed you, who would you pick?
It's kind of hard to look beyond Saliba. Obviously, Arsenal fans have been waiting 3 years for him to make his debut. He was excellent for Marseille last season. And he came into that Arsenal defence and just looked so composed for a player who has never played in the Premier League before and who's 21 years of age. Comfortable on the ball. Any threat he dealt with was just ease, and he looks a real Rolls Royce of a centre back.
Yeah, a bit of the Van Dijk's about him when he's not coming up against Mitrovic. I thought from Saliba, just did everything very, very well. I thought in Crystal Palace, tough place to go on the first day. I thought it was as a composed debut as you could have asked for from Saliba. Ricky, what about you? One Premier League debutant.
I probably would say Erling Haaland. I think many people were quick to write him off based on a pre-season friendly. I know, obviously, that's what Liverpool will call that cup now. Bearing in mind they didn't, obviously. Well, City will call it that. Obviously, bearing in mind they didn't go on to win it. But I think there would have been some emphasis on seeing how Haaland would react to actually playing first time on his hand Premier League football, and I think took his goal, the second one especially, really, really well. I think we're in for a really, really special striker in the Premier League once again. We had some greats down the years. I'll put Harry Kane. I have to put Henry into that mould as well. I think Haaland would be right up there. I really, really do. So that will be two of many, I think, Haaland. I've been really impressed with the way that he adapted himself. He obviously coming into a new league. I think we've seen strikers around world football that have come over here and have struggled. So to get 2 goals on his debut, formal debut, he'll be delighted. And I'm sure, as I keep on saying, that'll be 2 of many, but hopefully none against Spurs, please, Erland.
I'm going to pump for João Palhinha from Fulham because I thought he was excellent in that midfield. I actually thought him and Harrison Reed was quite a nice partnership. Harrison Reed's a player that I've actually rated for a few years, very neat and tidy on the ball, gets around the pitch very well. But Palhinha just was like he'd been a Premier League player his whole life. And I know he cost a fair bit of money for Fulham, but already I would say he looks worth that outlay because he was tackling, he was intercepting, putting himself in the right place, keeping it simple, real physical presence in the midfield as well, which I think is what you need as a newly promoted side. So yeah, Palhinha would be my pick. I thought he was absolutely outstanding for Fulham. Ben, I think we've got a top 10, haven't we, of debutants, which I keep saying, I feel like I'm saying it in a weird way, but yeah, top 10 debutants from the weekend.
Yeah, there's 3 Bournemouth players, which you won't be happy about.
No, not really.
Marcus Tavernier was top with an 8.03. 3 goal scoring chances created. Bournemouth only created 5, so he was responsible for 3 of them. Was unfortunate not to get an assist in that one. Also completed 6 dribbles, which was the joint most in the first round of fixtures. So a very good debut. I was quite surprised he came in, given he only joined at the beginning of the week, but Parker sort of had that faith in him and was rewarded. Kiefer Moore and Jordan Zamora both feature in there as well, as does Erling Haaland, Koulibaly and Núñez. Saliba's down in 7th, and to round off the bottom 3, it's Rasmus Christensen, João Palhinha and, controversially to some, Lisandro Martinez.
Let's swiftly move on from that and preview Chelsea v Spurs then. Ricky, we spoke obviously in the preview show for Spurs a few weeks ago. We were talking about Spurs potentially finishing 3rd, and I think actually all of us on the show that day, I think we predicted Spurs to finish 3rd. Did you have them 3rd as well? Do you still think they're best placed? Do you think they're best placed to replace Chelsea in that top 3?
At the moment, yeah. I mean, I think I said it before, and I maintain the fact with Chelsea. I still don't think they've done enough for me to really see me putting Chelsea in that top 4 at the moment. I mean, Spurs have started the season in really good fashion. Again, I will caveat by saying it's Southampton. They lost 4 out of the last 4 last season. So I think many were expecting Spurs to win. I think it was just a case of just how comprehensive Spurs did beat Saints at the weekend. Would have maybe raised a few eyebrows and coming from behind. I think we always know in the Premier League that I think always a first goal is crucial to the way Spurs responded, got back in the game and really kind of suffocated Saints towards that 4-1 win. Yeah, it was really, really good. And at the moment, yeah, I stand by what I'm saying. I still think Spurs will finish 3rd as things stand.
Yeah, I think I'd go along with that as well. Spurs very effective on the first day. Ben, the transfer business, it's a bit of a contrast, Spurs and Chelsea, because Spurs obviously got so much done so early, really backed the manager, got in the players that Conte wanted, which is a great thing for Spurs fans and a great thing for Conte, because you want to get Conte on side because he is a world-class manager. Chelsea operating a little bit differently. Obviously, they've had takeover issues in the summer, so it was always going to be harder for them to get going in the terms of doing the transfer business. There seems to be a lot of outgoings at Chelsea. Don't seem to want to have a striker at the football club. but they're obviously having to leave it late, which sometimes can impact the start of the season, and you feel it may impact this game in some way.
Possibly. I mean, they've got Sterling in, who is just a world-class forward who can lead the line if need be. And in support of Havertz, who was, arguably Chelsea's best striker last season, and with Mount there as well, they do still have a good front three, but I see what you mean about them missing kind of another piece of the puzzle in that attack. They do still need another centre-back. You've obviously missed out on Jules Koundé and were linked with Milan Skriniar. They are supposedly going to launch a world record bid for Wesley Fofana, and he would be a very good signing.
Yeah, great player.
But yeah, it just feels like they do need just one more attacker, especially with Lukaku and now Werner both gone.
Yeah, Ricky, were you surprised that Werner going? I mean, it hasn't worked out perfectly for him at Chelsea at all, but he can be effective. I think actually, if you look at his goal contributions, if you take into account goals and assists, I think he's one in two for goals and assists across his performances, which that's pretty good. In all honesty, it didn't quite work out, but he's not the first striker to fail at Chelsea. But to get rid of him when they're not even really been linked with any strikers at the moment, does seem a bit strange.
Yeah, if I'm being honest, I was more surprised. I was more surprised that Chelsea didn't bring in another forward first before letting Werner go. I think that's probably what surprised me the most. I mean, that for me is probably the biggest thing out of the whole equation, that you're seeing Chelsea not bringing in a forward before letting someone go in an area that they look very weak on. They seem to be insistent that they want to play. I think it looks like Havertz as a false nine. I'll be honest with you, to me, I don't think that's a sufficient idea for the rest of the season. They're going to have to look at bringing in another striker or two now at the end of the window. And that's what I mean about Chelsea. I mean, their business in general has been quite erratic, I'll be honest with you, Dan. Cucurella, was he ever really on their target list? I don't think so. The nature of how late they've moved. I think at the moment they're working against the clock. And I think that might catch up with them throughout the season. I think you have to identify your targets early. You need to know who you're bringing in from the start of the summer. I think when you're working backwards to some degree the way they are, I'm not sure how successful that model will be for Chelsea. Yeah,
and Ben Richarlison's returning for Spurs. He obviously missed the first game due to suspension. I think that was for throwing the flare back into the crowd. Really, he's the kind of player that perhaps Chelsea will rue missing out on, because he would have done a good job for them, especially in the circumstances they've got with no striker at the moment. He probably won't play for Spurs on Sunday, but to be part of that squad, you look at Spurs' front options now. Kulusevski on absolute fire, Kane and Son. Obviously, you got Lucas who can come in as well. Spurs' firepower far outweighs Chelsea's at the moment.
Yeah, Richarlison, I know he cost around 50 mil apparently, but you can't see him getting into that front three at the moment. But then it's also good to have that strength and depth with them, because they've really lacked kind of good backup for Harry Kane. Llorente was there, Carlos Vinicius were there, but they don't have that kind of flexibility as Richarlison, who can then cover Son, can then cover Kulusevski and also Kane, and do a very good job at doing so.
Yeah.
As you say, he won't initially break into that front three, because they're just, all three of them are so good together. But it's a nice option to have for Conte.
So, Ricky, obviously we've been very positive about Spurs in this podcast so far and in previous podcasts, but just to put a dampener on things a little bit, Conte's record against Chelsea last season reads 3 games, 3 defeats, 0 goals scored, and Chelsea also had Kepa in goal. Do you see that changing on Sunday?
Well, bizarrely, I know it's a risk of me to say this, I'm actually going into Stamford Bridge confident, which is never a good thing. I think when our record is 1 win in 21 years. So I should really be pessimistic, but bizarrely, the way Spurs have started the season, the way we've recruited over the summer, the mood around the club, from what I know from, again, just feedback, is that everybody's in a real good place right now. The players are really happy, the staff's really happy, everybody's pulling together. And I think you look at the opposite side to that, Chelsea, as I keep on saying, everything looks a bit erratic at the moment. What I will add is that Chelsea do have world-class players that on their day, if they all turn up and give 100% and 10 out of 10, it could be very hard to beat them. But if any one of those players are off their game, I think Conte has already got Tottenham mentally, physically prepared for the game, where he actually said at the back end of last season, he said, I wish I could go to Stamford Bridge with my team now. And that was before he made the 6 signings, with a 7th obviously coming in very soon. I just think, for me personally, I would take a point, because I'm not greedy. I think Stamford Bridge is always a tough place for Tottenham to go. But if Spurs go there and win, I think there'll be a whole nother level of pressure on Tottenham, just in terms of what the media are going to expect from Spurs. I think because Conte's in charge, that Spurs are being seen as almost a dark horse in the title race. And I think, for me, I would rather Spurs go under the radar, because I think Tottenham are a club where whenever there is pressure on them, they're not a great club at dealing with pressure. So, in answer to the question, Dan, I shouldn't be saying this, but I am going confident to Stamford Bridge. I must be mad, to be honest with you. I must be crazy.
And Ben, you're actually a Spurs fan as well. Do you echo that? Chelsea were efficient against Everton, I think would be a nice way of describing how they played. They went there, got the job done. Everton worked hard, found themselves in the game, but Chelsea, by a penalty, won the game and did the job, walked away with a 1-0, perfect away from home. But are you confident going to Stamford Bridge? Because it hasn't been a happy hunting ground at all.
No, can never be confident against Stamford Bridge. Chelsea had a pretty poor record going to Everton ahead of Saturday. They'd failed to win in 4. So to kind of get that back on track, to get that record sorted, it boosts morale coming into this game against Tottenham, which is exactly what you need for them. As Ricky says, I'll be happy with a point. Gladly take all 3, obviously, but I can't see it happening because whenever Tottenham do go to Chelsea, they seem to just kind of go into the shell. They don't play the way that they usually play. So I can't share Ricky's confidence on this one. I do think Chelsea will still kind of eke out the 3 points, but obviously I'll take all 3.
Oh, you know what? I think things are changing at Spurs. I think Conte is such a good manager that, I almost feel like past records don't mean too much now. This is a team very much in his mould. He's had that pre-season, that brutal pre-season with the players now. Conte, I think this is a different Spurs. I actually fancy Spurs to go to Stamford Bridge and pick up all 3 points. I think Spurs are that good at the moment. Really enjoy watching them. So many phenomenal players. And I think Chelsea's still in the process of building their team for this season, whereas Tottenham feel very much the finished article, ready for the season. So I think that will stand Spurs in good stead. Ben, we're going to do some combined 11s. Let's start with the statistical who scored 11 of Chelsea and Spurs players.
Yep, so this is based on league rating since the start of last season. So there are a couple of players that have come in that will factor in their who scored rating from the start of last season. In goal, it's Hugo Lloris. There's all Chelsea back 3 of Koulibaly, Thiago Silva and Trevor Chalobah. Obviously, he didn't get much of a look in towards the end of in the second half of last season, but he did have a very good who scored rating from the first half of last season, which comes into account. In midfield, there's Reece James, Rodrigo Bentancur, Mason Mount and Ivan Perisic. Whether Perisic starts on Sunday remains to be seen. I still think Conte will go with Sessegnon, but happy to be proven wrong. And up front, I think there's a total agreement on this one of Kulusevski, Kane and Son.
Completely disagree with the who scored statistical back 3. I think, Romero's been a great signing, and I think Eric Dyer does a very underrated job at Tottenham Hotspur.
Yeah, I think I've gone for the same team as Ben there, but my only change is that I have had Basuma in as opposed. I think we had Mount in there, so that's the only difference from my end. So my team was reading. I went with Lloris in goal. I think I had Chilwell and James as the fullbacks. Romero, Dyer. I had with Ben Davies at defence, and then we had midfield. I had obviously Basuma as opposed to Mount, and then a forward line of Kane, Son, Kulusevski.
Yeah, that front 3. I think everyone in the world would pick that front 3. Even
at the moment,
even
100%.
Even the Chelsea fan with the biggest blinkers on in the world, I think, would pick the Spurs front 3 over any Chelsea offering in there. Koulibaly v Kulusevski could be a big battle in there, Ricky. Koulibaly looked good last week. He looks like they won't miss Rudiger at all. Koulibaly's a world-class centre-half, been operating at the highest level for a long time. Really, really good signing. Everything you would want from a centre-back. But Kulusevski, unbelievable performance. Just such a flair play. Can do so much. And, these two have come up against each other in Serie A before as well. I still can't believe that Spurs have got Kulusevski because the season before... he was so good for Juve. Scored a lot of really important goals. For Spurs to have him, just been an unbelievable signing.
Yeah, it's funny because I think, and you'll notice that as well with social media. I mean, social media made their judgment on Kulusevski within 20 minutes. They went, this guy can't run. He's not quick. Get rid of him. And it's like, I mean, listen, this guy is just, when you see the way he's adapted to the Premier League, and listen, we've all seen, really, really good players from Serie A, from La Liga that come over here and really struggle to adapt themselves to the pace of the game, the intensity of the game. But Kulusevski looks like he's been playing over here for years. I mean, it's just frightening. You look at his goal involvement since he's come here. He's right up there amongst the top 3 or 5 in the league over the last couple of seasons already. And the biggest compliment I can pay him is that he has to be in Spurs' first team at the moment. And that's despite the fact they're spending a huge amount of money on Richarlison. And that's what I even love about Kulusevski. He knows he's under pressure for that spot now because Spurs have spent a huge amount of money on another forward. And normally when Spurs spend 60 million on a player, there is that expectancy that guy has to start And Kulusevski, to be fair, is saying, you've got to take my place. And I've got to be honest and say to you at the moment, we're lucky. Spurs have got a lot of games coming up. They've obviously got Champions League. We've got the domestic competitions. We're going to be playing almost 3 times a week, essentially, at times. So I think there'll be lots of games to come where we can share the minutes out. But for the moment, I mean, Kulusevski, the biggest compliment I can pay to him is that he's undroppable. And I think, as you said, Dan, we're a very lucky club to have him. He has already shown his class. And you know what? 22, the frightening thing is, he's only going to get better. That's the greatest thing.
Arguably first name on the team sheet at
Yeah,
the moment. It sounds mad when Kane and Son are there, but at the moment, I think Kulusevski is probably the first pick for Spurs. He's that good. Let's do some predictions then. Ben, yours first. What are you predicting for the game?
I know initially I said that Chelsea would probably win, but that's just the pessimistic side of me supporting Spurs. It's been ingrained in me for about 15 years now. I'm going to go for a draw, 1-1, playing it safe.
Ricky?
Yeah, Joe, I was going to say the same thing. I'll spice up a little bit. I'll say a 2-2, but I was also going to say a draw. Dan, I'm not greedy. I would love to sit here and predict Spurs to go to Stamford Bridge and win. But at the same time, acknowledge the fact, listen, Chelsea got world-class players. They've got a really good manager. The crowd could be up for that one. I mean, I have to say, Stamford Bridge, generally, it's not the most loudest atmosphere for Premier League games, but they do, those fans, the home fans, do raise the roof for Tottenham at home. They will try and make it as intimidating as possible and as uncomfortable for those Spurs players. So I think, putting all that into account, I think I'll take a point and go for a 2-2 draw.
Oh, you're going to like my prediction, I think. Chelsea 0, Tottenham 2.
Wow.
I think Chelsea, as efficient as they were last week, I didn't see them as a threat going forward against Everton. I think Spurs will be a tougher nut to crack as well. So I can see Spurs going there, keeping a clean sheet. And I think at the moment, you just cannot see Spurs not scoring. So I think it'll be a relatively comfortable 2-0 for Tottenham. That's what I'm going with.
It's incredible when you say that, Dan.
It doesn't matter to me, does it?
It's incredible when you say that, Dan, when you think the fact Spurs have only won once in the last 21 years at Stamford Bridge. And I've seen it a lot this week. Lots of people saying they expect Spurs to go there and win, which is obviously indicament to where Spurs are at the moment. It's great to hear that.
Yeah, it's coming. This is the season. Lump all your money on 2-0 to Tottenham Hotspur. Oh, good. The bit I was really looking forward to now. Let's preview Aston Villa v Everton, Ben. Villa, you look forward to the season. You're buzzing for the season to start. You sit down to watch the game, and within 2 minutes, you've faced a corner and you're 1-0 down against a newly promoted side. You then transpire to do absolutely nothing in the game. Yeah, I don't even know what to say. That pretty much sums up Villa's day, but it's a really disappointing opening day for Villa fans, wasn't it, Ben?
Yeah, it's the second season in a row now you've lost to a newly promoted side on the opening day of the season. Villa just weren't very good. You just weren't at the races. I think that's a kind way of putting it. But then, you've got the big eternal managerial battle of Gerrard versus Lampard. But they do have very similar win ratios, which is actually quite surprising because when Gerrard first came in, there was kind of a boost around Villa Park, but his win ratio since he took charge is 35.7%, whereas Lampard's is 31.6%. So it's a lot closer than some might care to admit. You need to get up at them early, you need to attack them from the outset, and you need to just up the game straight away because if Villa Park gets going, then Everton are going to really struggle, I think. But I think you should win. Should be in the operative word there.
I do not feel that way at all at the moment. Honestly, I think you've got to earn the right to be in a football match. I don't think Villa earned that right against Bournemouth at any point during the game. It was almost like they kind of felt we can just turn up here and beat Bournemouth. And if you do that in the Premier League, you get turned over. And Bournemouth won that game very comfortably. Villa were poor, didn't really create anything, didn't defend properly. Set pieces were a complete nightmare. So if I was Everton, I'd have been massively working on set pieces through the week. But Ricky, Everton have made a couple of signings. Well, Connor Cody in particular. If Lampard's looking to implement a back three and try and make Everton a little bit more solid this season, really in the Premier League, there's not many better operators in the middle of a back three than Connor Cody. I think that's a really smart signing for Everton. Yeah,
really smart. I think also when you take into account they've got Tarkowski there as well. They've got two players of very, very high level of Premier League experience. And I think Everton in general, I mean, listen, they're again that word project. I know people despise hearing that word philosophy project, but they are under, of course, Lampard. He's, I think, trying to build out a new stable Everton team, and that takes time. I mean, there will be, as I've always seen last season, bumps in the road with that. I do expect them to struggle again, purely because, I mean, at the moment they've got no forward. If we've been honest with them, Calvert-Lewin obviously is going to be out now for, I think, around 6 to 9 weeks. I heard. Again, it's hard to put a timescale on the injury that he has got. So you'd imagine Everton need to go and get a striker in before the end of the window. I think, look at what they've done so far, Everton. They've signed players that obviously they've done their due diligence on. I know from my end, they were looking at Harry Winks for a while. They seem to have steered clear of that player now. So I think the key for Everton is to buy smart, isn't it? I think they've made some horrendous buys in the last 3-4 seasons where there's not been enough thought going into them. And I think the key now is they've got to get the recruitment right. And I think we know that at most clubs, Liverpool are one of the best at it. That's why Liverpool are up there at the top of the league, same as City. Arguably, say now as Tottenham have done really well in January with Kulusevski. And of course, Bentancur. That's why Spurs got that fourth place. So I think for Everton, it's going to be another tough season for them. But I think there's question marks about Lampard still as well. I don't think Lampard is still seen as the Messiah just yet. Of course, he kept them up, but there were still quite a number of question marks. Losing at Burnley the way they did last season. There's been results that you have to question, should that have happened? So very much it's interesting to see how they get on through the season. I think in a weird way, I think we joked off here, it's the Lampard-Gerrard derby, isn't it? It's interesting to see really two iconic Premier League players coming together now as managers. Who's going to get the better hand of each other? Because there'll be pride in there. I mean, listen, both of them are going to want to win that. They know, listen, they're part of the golden era of England where they should have won a trophy, as we all say about England with that midfield. How did they not? So it's going to be intriguing to see how they both get on in their managerial journeys, because I say a lot has been made about what they could do, what they can do. A lot of it is about potential. So interesting to see how they both get on.
Yeah, it's one of them. There's a few going on at the moment. It's one of those managerial battles, Ben, that makes you feel very old. Steven Gerrard and Lampard managing Premier League teams. You've got Vieira managing Premier League teams. Scott Parker, all the midfielders from my younger day. In fact, I don't even think I was that young when they were playing. They all seem to be managers now. From the outside looking in, the Tyrone Mings situation, Ben, I mean, I could go to absolute town on it because I'm really frustrated with it. But what do you make of that situation?
It seems Gerrard just has beef with him. I just can't see why. You probably know better than I do, Dan. He seems like quite a popular member of the squad. He seems quite a popular member of the fans. To have stripped him of the captaincy and not even include him in sort of the vice captaincy or club captain is really surprising. And that could have quite an adverse effect on the squad off the pitch. And then that'll then result in a downturn of form on it, which could heighten the pressure on Gerrard. It's just very strange.
Yeah, I mean, I love Tyrone Mings. He's been a great signing for Villa, done a lot of unbelievable things at the football club, and Villa wouldn't be where they are today without Tyrone Mings. It's obviously Gerrard's prerogative to change a captain. He's decided to do that, but all the stuff that comes with it, and then taking him out the team as well, seems to be talking about him a lot as well. It just seems to be having an adverse effect on things. And then if you're doing things like that, you've got to go and win the game. So to turn up at Bournemouth and be absolutely pathetic, Gerrard won't be happy with that. Ricky, actually, Gerrard at Villa so far has been a mixed bag. Started very well, came in, stabilised them. I could see what a Gerrard team was all about. And then, to be honest, it's gone a little bit awry since then. Villa couldn't draw a game to save their lives last season. So it was either win 2 and then lose 3 or 4 in a row. That seemed to be what happened to Villa all the way through Gerrard's tenure last season. One of Villa's best performances was actually against Spurs in the first half. We absolutely battered you.
Yeah, he was.
In that first half,
you were really good.
Then managed to go on and lose the game 4-0. But he needs a win this weekend against Everton, doesn't he? It could be quite a tetchy game, this one.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're just talking briefly off air, just in terms of how much patience and time will Gerrard get. It's interesting because, again, I view Villa as an absolutely massive club. They're a massive club. They're one of the most established Premier League sides. That in my years growing up, Villa were always up there fighting for Europe. Always under David O'Leary. You look at them as a club. They're always pushing for more. So I think there'll be an element of giving Gerrard some time because, again, they've obviously invested in him. They've let him bring his own players in. He's obviously canged the captain, which, again, is a big call. I agree with what Ben said there. To do that, you've got to be quite, sure-minded. That's the right call to make because you don't just change a captain flippantly because that does have a reaction in the dressing room. So, again, not put him as a vice-captain. It's a little bit of a slap in the face. Now, the key is how Tyrone Mings will react. I think social media-wise, he's done really well, isn't he? I think the way he's reacted on social media is what you want to see from one of your players. So, I mean, clearly inside, that may be another question, but it is a key game. I think, listen, Villa lose their first 2. I think fans do start getting a bit concerned, and rightly so, because you start the season, you make the investment, they bought players early in the summer. And Everton, we're being honest with you, Everton were in the bottom 3 last season fighting to stay up. So Villa, I think, being at home, they need to get a result for the fans. They really, really do. So I honestly see it being a draw. I know you're going to kill me, Dad. I do. I honestly see two teams there. I think I can see that being a 1-1 or a 2-2. For the moment, I just think both clubs are still finding their way. And again, I do think it's quite key that we've still got a few weeks of the window to run. I think both have said individually they would rather the window shut now. Because again, players being linked elsewhere is not great. Not knowing you actually are going to work as a whole of the squad. So I think it'll be a draw. And I'm also going to say to you, I don't know if both those managers will finish at both those clubs this season. I think the jury's really out as to whether they'll both be there come the end of the season.
I mean, Lampard, to be honest, last season, he only had to be a little bit more liked than Rafa Benitez, which he was always going to achieve. And he did do well to keep them up. Yeah. He did make them a bit harder to beat, and he deserves credit for keeping them up. But I don't think Everton fans will settle for that kind of football all the way through this season. They want to be entertained a little bit more. But he just benefited really from not being Rafa Benitez when he came in. And Villa Park, I'm telling you, Villa go 1 down early, that atmosphere will turn very, very quickly, and Gerrard might find himself on a sticky wicket. I'm going to go 1-1 as well. Villa to do that and fall behind and somehow find their way back into the game. Ben, have you got a prediction?
Yeah, I'm actually going for Villa to win 2-1.
Go on, Ben.
I think Everton don't have a great record at Villa Park. I know you can't judge on previous results, but they've also got 2 new centre-backs come in Tarkowski and now Cody, and I know both are Premier League experienced, but they do have to get settled with playing alongside one another, playing in a specific system under Lampard, who has now lost Mina and Godfrey to injury. I just think that Villa should be doing a lot of heavy lifting here, should come away with all 3 points on Saturday.
I'm presuming you didn't see any of that Bournemouth game, because I don't think you'd be coming here and saying that if you'd watched 90 minutes of that. Let's move on now to Arsenal against Leicester, both of your favourite team to talk about, Arsenal. But Ricky, they were impressive on Friday night against Crystal Palace. I know you won't like them, but there was a lot to like about what we saw from Arsenal. Kind of falls in line with... Every time an Amazon documentary drops, I go all in on that team. I did it with Spurs and Mourinho when the Amazon documentary was on. I was all in on Spurs, and just watching Arteta operate. And looking at Arsenal, this time last year, I wasn't really sure what their plan was, but you look at their team now, and, they deserve credit because they have improved.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest with you, Dan. I'm not sure that Amazon documentary has done them any favours so far. I mean,
I've only watched the first episode, to be honest.
We've seen obviously the first 3. We've seen Arteta bring out a pair of speakers that are quite like what I had when I was 12. To try and endorse what the atmosphere was like at Liverpool with Never Walk Alone. I know Anfield and Never Walk Alone can sometimes be a little bit quiet, but to compare it to a pair of JVC speakers that were about the size of I said when I was a 10 or 12-year-old, I'm not sure that's the right way to prepare for a game. But listen, I think at the end of the day with Arsenal, pains me to say it, they've bought really, really well. Look like they've got a plan there. Look like they've got a project there. I feel sick even saying about this kind of feel sick talking about.
I bet you're glad Spurs are in a good place, actually.
I tell you, it's a lot easier doing this when Spurs are in a good place. I still think Arsenal, I keep saying this, I think what Arsenal haven't got is a top tier manager. And I think have they got Conte, I would be terrified. But again, it's Arteta. And I think in the big games, I still think he struggles massively. And again, listen, the guy, credit to him, he's learning on the job. It's not easy taking on a big job like that. I mean, Arsenal are a huge football club. I am surprised by how much the fans' expectations is now just the top 4. Because growing up as a Spurs fan, I think I was having the invincible rubbed in my face. I was being told Arsenal winning the double, the trebles. It's horrendous. It was horrendous, Dan. So the thing that I say for me is that Arsenal's expectancy now is to get into the top 4. I think if Arsenal don't finish in the top 4, Arteta's under massive pressure. I think it was a big win for him on Friday night because we know the way Arsenal started last season, the season before up at Brentford. I think just for the fans to see they get off to a good start. They've made quite a number of signings. The fact that Jesus played quite well but didn't score. I think they'll have a good season, Arsenal. I don't think they'll maybe finish in the top 4. I think, although with Chelsea, I've kind of swayed between Arsenal and Chelsea for top 4. I think maybe Tuchel's experience just gets them over that line. But Arsenal will be there or thereabouts. I mean, that's the biggest compliment I can pay them, Dan. I've got to be quiet now because it's making me feel sick saying too much more. But they're doing all right. They're doing okay.
If they'd have had Jesus last season, I think it's feasible to say Arsenal would have got top 4 over Spurs.
Yeah, 100%. He's just a huge upgrade on Lacazette in every area. Zinchenko is the signing that I really like. To Tierney didn't do anything wrong, but he has got his injury issues, and without him last season, they really lacked that attacking thrust down the left. But Zinchenko is just, he's able to get forward really well, but he's also able to tuck into midfield and kind of give him that presence down the left, like greater presence down the left. And he's so good in tight areas as well that
looks
he
after
just
the ball as well.
Yeah, he's just, I think he's an unbelievable sign for Arsenal.
Yeah, and Ricky, Leicester, worried for Leicester. 2-0 up they were, looking good, looking like they put all the adversity of the summer behind them. Still yet to bring a player in. They've lost their captain in Kasper Schmeichel. Like Cody leaving Wolves, I think that leaves a massive void in the dressing room for Leicester. There's still talk over Fofana, possibly Maddison going. It doesn't all feel right at Leicester at the moment. Rodgers potentially, I think, could end up walking if things continue and he doesn't manage to get any players in. Would you be worried as a Leicester fan?
Yeah, I would be. I mean, I can only speak from when I see body language. Rodgers looks incredibly frustrated in his pre-match and his post-match press conferences. He looks like a man that clearly wants more, but he knows he can't say how he really wants to feel because the hierarchy are watching. So it's a really difficult one for him. I mean, the hard thing is Leicester, what's the ambition there? Of course, they had an incredible season when they won the Premier League. They then obviously followed that up a year or so down the line with the FA Cup under Rodgers. The reality is you look at where those teams are now, how teams have evolved and moved on. Liverpool, City looks set and cement in the top two. You look at Tottenham, Arsenal, it looks like a project and a plan there. Chelsea are still Chelsea. They've still got world-class players. And then outside of that, really, Leicester fall into that mix with West Ham, the Evertons, the Aston Villas. I don't really know what their ambition is, and they haven't really kicked on as a club in terms of the squad there as well. I mean, there's not been a replenishment. I mean, Rodgers at the back end of last season called for an overhaul, and we're sitting here and recording in the middle of August now, and he's got relatively the same squad to work with, and he's lost Pereira to injury as well, which is a massive blow to him. And he's admittedly said that he's not sure if they'll do any business. So I can only assume Leicester fans will be really frustrated. Obviously, I'm not a Leicester fan, so I feel like I can't comment exclusively on how they feel. But based on their performance at the weekend, to go 2-0 up against Brentford, and don't get me wrong, Brentford are a good side on their day, but you're at home, you're in command of the game, to let that slip like that would have been incredibly frustrating. I mean, from day one, to have that as a sucker punch there and concede 2 goals doesn't bode well, I think. And Rodgers, as I've said about Lampard and Gerrard, I'm not too sure if he'll be there come the end of the season.
Now, I guess, Ben, if you look at Leicester, there's 2 seasons where they finished 5th and they really should have got 4th. And now look back on those 2 seasons now as a massive missed opportunity. The club could be in a completely different place now if they'd had a couple of seasons of Champions League or even 1 season of Champions League. I'm not sure how they managed to finish 8th last season. I really felt like they had a poor season, but they somehow managed to finish 8th. But at the moment, you look at that team, a couple of injuries, and they're a team that picks up a lot of injuries, Leicester, for whatever reason. I think they're going to struggle to be in the top half. Yeah,
I think that's the key thing is you look at that immediate starting 11. The one on Sunday against Brentford is a good 11. But beyond that, they do lack that strength and depth. And with Maddison still linked with a move away, Fofana linked with a move away, and they've lost Schmeichel, and now they've lost Hamza Chowdhury to Watford as well. Their squad's looking very thin in terms of top flight experience beyond that immediate starting 11. And as you said about the injuries last season, if that happens now, they are just going to start to plummet, you feel.
Let's have a prediction for this one then. Arsenal v Leicester. Ricky, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, pains me to say it. I can only see a home win. I'm going to go for a convincing 3-1 home win to Arsenal.
Yep, same. I was going to go for 3-1 to Arsenal as well. Ben?
All across the board, 3-1 to Arsenal.
3-1. It is. I fully expect Leicester to go there and win 1-0 with those predictions. Let's finish then with Nottingham Forest.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you'll be very happy with that, wouldn't you? I'm sure. Let's finish then with Nottingham Forest v West Ham. Of course, Jesse Lingard, Ben, he'll be playing against his old team. Many perhaps thought that Lingard would go to West Ham. He's chosen to go to Forest for a year to begin with. It's Forest's first home league Premier League game for 23 years. It is good to have a team like Forest back in the Premier League, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got some mates who are Newcastle fans, and I said to them last week that Newcastle Nottingham Forest is a proper Premier League game.
Yeah.
So to have them back in the Premier League is a breath of fresh air. They look really good under Steve Cooper. I mean, they were bottom of the Championship when he took over. So for them to finish in the playoffs and then to beat Huddersfield in the final is a huge accomplishment. They didn't look too bad against Newcastle last week, but then, Newcastle have been very good in 2022, so it's not really much. You can't really look much into that. My issue would be how many players they've signed. You look at Fulham when they came up 2 seasons, a couple of years ago. they signed about 80 players in each window, and then went straight back down. So you have to look at the fact that they've bought in at least 12, 13 players now. You've got a whole starting 11 there that's just a new team, essentially. So it'll be interesting to see how they do in their first home game. They'll have the crowd right behind them. It'll be interesting to see how Lingard gets on against West Ham. He had a decent record there, as you mentioned. But, it's just nice to have them back, I think. It's nice to have a team kind of in Nottingham, back in the Premier League.
Yeah, home games will be important, won't they, Ricky? I mean, if you're going to stay up as a newly promoted side, your home form is absolutely vital. But it's a tough game against West Ham. West Ham are a very, very good Premier League outfit nowadays. But with the fans behind them, Forest will think they've got a chance of 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, again, Premier League games that you said there for Forest, the importance of the home games are absolutely crucial. West Ham are a bizarre team on their travels. I know they've occasionally seemed to struggle. They have got some surprise results on the road, but I think it's weird. Steve Cooper, I've got a really good feeling for him as a manager. I really like the way that he got Forest up last season. Bearing in mind what he took over there. I think they were bottom of the table when he took up, or near bottom, and he took them straight to the playoffs and got them up. So he may surprise a few people. I think Lingard, because he's only a 12-month deal, a season-long loan, many are questioning whether obviously it's right if it's financial rather than obviously based on the fact that he wants to join Forest. So in a way, I mean, that should hopefully motivate him to want to put a performance on. And do you know what? He'll be getting a lot of stick from the West Ham fans, I think, personally, at the weekend. So if ever you need to show what you're about and to prove yourself, that's a perfect opportunity to do that. So wouldn't surprise me at all if Lingard turns up and scores a couple of goals. But West Ham, I think they've got Scamacca's a great signing. I've got to say,
good player.
Do you know what, to get someone like that of his level, I don't know how West Ham do this. West Ham, over the years, when you look at the kind of signings West Ham have made, the Mascaranos, the Tevezes, and now this guy, and there's been some more over the years, they do seem to pull out some absolute worldy signings, and people are like, well, how did you do that? I think this guy's going to very quickly do really well in the Premier League, and I think he'll have a lot of the big clubs after him, in the next 18, 24 months. So I probably will say for this one, Dan, I'll probably go for a draw. I think Forest, they can't afford to lose at home. It's the second game. They need to get something. And West Ham, I feel they didn't play too bad against, obviously, City, but it's always a tough game. City at home, it's one of the toughest games you're going to get in the Premier League. I feel West Ham will pick up something, and I reckon Forest will get a point. So 1-1.
Yeah. I'm going to go 2-1 to West Ham. I think if any manager deserved to be backed by the board this summer, I think it probably was David Moyes. I think he's done a brilliant job at West Ham. And Scamacca and Cornet, they will add something to that attack. I think at times they couldn't really refresh their attack much last season, West Ham, and maybe that cost them in the end. But Scamacca and Cornet being there, you've got alternatives to already go with great players like Bowen and Antonio. Fornals, Lanzini still there as well. They've got some good players to come into their front three. West Ham, I think they could do with a few more options in central midfield to take the burden off Rice and Souček a little bit. But I think they'll go to Forest, and I think they'll win 2-1. Scamacca, like you say, Ricker, I think he's an exceptional player. He's going to score a lot of goals for West Ham. Ben, we'll finish with your prediction.
I was considering whether to go for a draw or not, but I think you've now swayed it, and I think West Ham are going to go and win 1-0.
Yeah.
As you say, they've now got that sort of quality in attack now, Cornet and Scamacca, and that just eases the pressure on Bowen and Antonio to get the goals week in, week out.
Yeah, options off the bench vital in the Premier League, as we've seen a number of times. That does us for this week's edition of the Edge of the Box podcast, previewing match week 2 in the Premier League. We will, of course, be back next week to preview game week 3. So make sure you've got your post notifications on and are subscribed to the channel so you know when that video is staying out. That video is coming out. Ricky, thanks ever so much for joining us. Good luck to Spurs on Sunday. Obviously, we all know it's going to be 2-0 to Tottenham Hotspur because my predictions are always spot on. And thanks to Ben as well for being here as well. Yeah, as I say, we'll be back next week. Only one thing left to say. Stay safe.